Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have really wanted to have you on for a while because finances for me are so important. Like, I love talking about money, but it is definitely a taboo topic for everyone. And I feel like, this podcast is all about wellness and women's wellness, but all aspects of women's wellness. And I really feel like finances is a part of wellness, whether that's because it has a huge influence on your relationships or your mental health or how you show up in the world and what you can do and your freedom. So I wanted to bring you on specifically because you are someone that does finances differently from, I guess, the stereotype of what I see a financial advisor is like a white man sitting at a desk telling me, like, invest in these stocks.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring you on because of that. And from your perspective, I would love to know what financial wellness means to you.
Oh, that's a great question. And you're right. I think people underestimate how much it actually impacts everything to do with your life. So it's not just about financially being fit, and that's the only thing it impacts is your bank balance. It's so much more than that. It really does impact your health. It impacts your relationships. It impacts how fulfilled you are in life. It honestly has so much of an impact, more than what people think. And so for me, I've always been huge about it's not just numbers on a page. It's about connecting it with what makes you feel good, what makes you feel like you're working towards things that are actually fulfilling, that you're not stressed, you're not staying up at night, being awake at night, stressing about what's going to happen, what if, all those things. So it's everything, really.
Yeah, I really, really agree. And if we are talking about, because I think, the women listening to this podcast are not the ones that need the advice that are like, stop drinking coffee and then invest that. Like, we're not all about that.
Yeah.
We are more about what our values are, and we do want to create more wealth, more impact, and feel financially secure. I think that is what a lot of high achieving women are after. So I am a girl that loves the tangible and the strategies, and I know most of the women listening do. So if we've got someone or someone comes to you and they're like, I want to be able to create wealth or financial stability, what would be the first step? Because a lot of people don't even know where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is very common. My very typical client that comes to see me, they are feeling overwhelmed. They're not even really chasing the highest returns. They're not looking for extreme high levels of wealth. They just want certainty. They want to feel understood. They want to feel the clarity. They want peace of mind. And sometimes that doesn't mean being the richest person you know. Sometimes it just means feeling like you're going to be okay or you're on the right path. So what I find, and that's very common, and to your point before around the stereotypical sort of what does a financial advisor do, I think for so long it was that stereotypical, here's money, invest it, and then that's where the conversation ended, other than, okay, how are we going to get the best return for you? And so what I feel for a lot of people where they come to me is that overwhelm really starts from just not even knowing where they are or not even knowing where they want. And we can't put together a financial plan until you know that. And so even with or without a financial advisor, I think the first step for anybody is just to really know and get clear on where you are. So it can be as simple as writing down what you owe, what you own, what you earn, what you spend, and really getting clear on what that looks like, because you can't change anything unless you know what that is, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like not understanding what you're putting in your food body-wise and going, oh, I want to run a marathon, but like I don't even know what exercise I'm doing. I don't know what I'm eating. If you don't really know your baseline, how are you going to sort of figure out from there? So I think the first step for anyone is just awareness. A lot of people avoid it, or they think, oh, my first step is to dump the $10,000 I have in savings straight into shares. Okay, what shares do I put that in? It's so much more than that. So it's about sort of just taking that step back and getting a bit of a financial health check is the first step, I'd say, whether you're seeking guidance from a professional or taking that step on your own as part of your journey.
Yeah, okay. So we have kind of outlined, I love what you said about know where you are in terms of know what you're spending, how much you owe, kind of like a bit of an audit. Say we've audited everything. Yeah. What do we do next?
Great question. I feel like sometimes people, they save or they put money towards goals after they've spent money. So I really do think it's more of a proactive view rather than reactive. So what I mean by that is some people think that they are spending or saving X amount, but they don't truly know what that is. So I think a big part of that audit to then the next step in that leeway to that step is really understanding, well, how much do you actually want to spend? And is that $200 a week dinner out, is that something that's actually aligned to your values? So I think the connecting point there is really then starting to connect any financial goal or any financial action with something that's actually meaningful for you. So once you understand where you are, and then once you understand what you want or what's meaningful for you, that's when you can start to think about, what does that look like? What is the time frame? What do you actually need? Are you able to do that, or are there adjustments? So getting really clear on what's actually valuable for you and meaningful for you is the next key step towards any financial decision.
Yeah. I really, really love that. And I think when we talk about wealth and creating wealth, your view is very, very different, I think, from, a typical financial man. Yep, stockbroker. Yeah. And I have always had the view that you have to be basically balling, like you have to have so much fucking money in your bank account to even see someone, to be able to go and make decisions in terms of your financial health and your wealth that you want to create. But talking to you prior to this, I realized that's actually not the case.
Correct.
So could you explain like where people would start, or how do they know that they're ready to kind of take that next step? They've done the audits, they know where they want to go, but from there, whether they're ready to see someone like you.
Yeah. And look, there is that very big myth out there, and it has been, I'd say, a profession issue of ours in the past, where there was that myth, I guess, around you had to be old, or you had to be retiring, or you had to be a millionaire to be able to see an advisor. And it's absolutely not the case. There are some professionals out there that do help people like that. But the people that I help are the ones that are in the thick of it, the ones that are in life. And sometimes I do have that initial call with someone that they go, I don't even know if I should be seeing you, or if I'm ready, or if it's another professional. Is it a mortgage broker? Is it an accountant? Or is it you? And so I think the first step is just taking that action and just having that initial chat. Most advisors will offer a free intro chat for 15, 30 minutes. And so really the only thing it's going to cost you is 15 minutes of your time, half an hour of your time. So it's always worth asking the question. I think for me, the trigger point, and that's one of the first questions I ask everybody when they give me a call for the first time, is why now? What's motivated you to reach out? What's going on? What was the sort of trigger? What was the prompt for you to reach out now? And what's going on for you? Or what are the things that you're struggling with or not sure about? And so it's that life complexity, I would say, where people get to a point where they go, okay, my style of advice at least is where people need someone else, like a third party, coming in and saying, okay, let's just take a step back. Let's not jump into strategy mode, not jump into solution mode, and just really have someone that is there as a sounding board, listening to what's going on for you and what do you actually want to get out of your life and everything that you're working so hard for. So I think to answer your question in summary, is really just taking that step and asking the question. And if it's not the right time, then at least you know. I definitely think it's worth just taking that first step.
Yeah. What people then come to you, because I just like to think about general women in my audience, even me as an example. What type of women then come to you as examples or cases that people can see themselves in? So could you give like examples of clients that you have, or kind of why people come to you in the first place? It's not just because they have $100,000 sitting in their bank account.
Yeah, great question. A lot of women in particular, single women in particular as well, they would come to me because they are perhaps semi-established in their role at work. They've got some savings. They are at the start of their investing journey. Maybe they're about to think about purchasing their first property, or they've purchased an apartment and they want to see what they can do next from it because they have some equity in it. Maybe they have surplus cash flow. Maybe they have no idea what their cash flow looks like, and they know they just need that accountability. So quite often people say, I know I can save more, but I have a really good income, or I have the ability, I just for some reason just can't, and I just need someone to come in and help me. And I think that's where I can come in as well and help them create that attachment between the meaning of that goal. I think it's really hard to do anything. You think of any goal, I'm sure you've tried to go after. Like if you don't want it, like you're probably not going to go after it, right? So that's as well where my style of advice is. I'm not going to dictate to you what you should do or what's important to you. That's what I help you uncover. And whether that's a trade-off discussion around certain things that are maybe some more priorities than others. That's that. And then some of the other things, I guess, as examples, a lot of career-driven women who are single very commonly actually want to talk about saving and having a plan to freeze eggs, for example, IVF, and thinking about, do we put an emergency fund away for that so that that's there ready to go? So something that's super meaningful. It's not technically, yes, it's a financial goal because they need to save money for it, but there's so much emotion attached to that, and they want that security and that peace of mind knowing that if they get to a certain age, and I've had it before where it actually broke my heart. One client once, it was in COVID, and single lady, she went for some medical tests, and she said, I was in Melbourne, full shutdown, lockdown COVID, and the doctor called her on a Friday night and said, you need to freeze eggs pretty much in the next few months, otherwise it's now or never. And she didn't have the funds for it at the time.
Oh my
Honestly,
gosh.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now. And it broke my heart. And I just thought, you know, if I can be part of someone's journey where they have that money there to go, yep, cool, okay, you know what, I'm just going to put everything else on hold. I've got those funds there to do what I need to do. And that's just one example. There's so many things that are meaningful to, and it's just different meaningful things to everyone. But things like that, I think it's really, the word is just that independence. The freedom and the security to be able to do those things if and when they pop up, whether they're, you know, tough decisions or whether they're really exciting things as part of your life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I just empathize. I'm sure you hear most beautiful stories, but also heartbreaking stories in which I have never obviously associated with finances, but finances is so tied to everyone's personal life and their goals and what they want to achieve. So I could imagine not only are you a financial advisor, but you'd be doing so much psych work and support and holding space for your clients as well.
Absolutely.
When you said just then, when you said like women, you know, maybe they have surplus income and they're spending it, and sometimes they don't actually realize how they're spending it or they don't know, do you kind of help them see or create strategies around money habits? Because I do think we kind of habitually do things, and we've done it maybe from our past, or we have money stories. We can obviously go into that, but there's so much that are tied to money and the way we spend. Do you work with women in that capacity around how they spend, or tying their values to what they spend? Or
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a lot of the heavy work up front, is to get to the bottom of what's actually important. And I actually had a couple the other day, and they're going through their IVF journey, and they're we're helping plan, you know, do you take 12 months off work, 18 months off work? And the reason I'm telling this story is at the end of the session where we went through their financial plan, it was actually really nice to hear. It's probably been a 3-month journey from when they first reached out. So it can advice, and just for the listeners out there, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a magic bullet. It can take some time to get good advice, but they said some really nice things at the end of our session where they said, you know what, at the start, we were kind of thinking, you know, like, why is she asking us all these questions? Like, what does this have to do with money? And we just thought we'd trust the process and whatnot. And when we got to the end of it, where I went through their advice and their plan, we're still working through different modelling and scenarios around what that time off work looks like to grow their family. They were saying that they'd spoken to a friend who had a very different experience with an advisor who pretty much just gathered all the data, chucked it in a plan, said, yep, this is what you should do with your money, and then that was kind of it. So I do spend a lot of time at the front of the experience to really understand my clients and what's meaningful for them, so that we can start to map that out. And really what that looks like is going through those different stages to understand what that looks like, potentially having a bit of I call it my decisions mapping session. So really understanding, do you really want the $2-3 million home, or do you want to be able to send your kids to private school, or can you do both, or what does that look like? So, or can you take 18 months off work, or do you have to go back at 6 months? And would you prefer to spend time with your kids as they grow up so young? So those sorts of decision making, and I do that through the likes of like our conversations, modelling, projections, talking generally through those scenarios before we even add in the financial strategies around it. It's just about this is where you're at, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, like, especially around the growing family and time off work and decisions around really anything is, oh my gosh, actually, you know what? Now we're going through that. I really didn't want an investment property. I just thought it sounded good because someone at a barbecue told me I should do it and it would give me tax deductions. So I think unpacking that, a lot of people come to their own realizations to go, actually, I thought that was meaningful for me and it's really not. So you know what? Like, this is what I want to plan for. And then we start to develop the financial plan around what's actually meaningful.
Yeah, no, I think that is so good. When you were saying like, someone told me this, I'm sure you hear it in your industry. It's like, this person told me this or this. There is probably a million different ways and a million different advices out there and people trying different things. Is there any things that you could tell us, obviously from a generalized standpoint, not personalized advice, that you have heard that you're like, no, that's not great? Or do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. To be honest, the classic one is to either invest, borrow, or have, say, an investment property or something. Anything to do with, I need to spend money to get tax deductions. I say this all the time. It's just like someone saying, go to Officeworks and spend $1,000 on stationery so you can get 30% back. It's like, you're still out of pocket, you know? And I think, you know what, that comes down to our education system. Like, we don't learn about tax at school. Like, I don't think I've measured a triangle since school. I don't know why we learned that.
I had to build like a bridge in calculus. Like, I have never once fucking built another bridge using equations.
I just think back, I'm like, when we said to our teachers, we're never going to, most of the time we haven't learned, and we haven't used a lot of that stuff. And I think, you know, I use that example, but I'm not even joking when a lot of people out there think a tax deduction is they get 100% of their money back, and it's not the case. So things like that is that advice to spend money to try and get deductions. In some cases, yes, it might be a really great strategy for you because of 1,000 reasons, but other cases it may be really setting you down the wrong path. So it's that general sort of like barbecue chat, as I call it. Or listening to other professionals who aren't licensed to give advice is a massive red flag.
Okay.
I won't go into detail.
Yep,
I want to
that's
throw
totally
anyone
fine.
under the bus. But there are some professionals that aren't actually licensed to give financial advice. So I think it's about just being really careful of who you're listening to. And I think it's always great to listen to ideas, but if you're actually going to make such big decisions about your finances especially, you need to get licensed, qualified financial advice from an advisor or planner.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think, you know, like you said you map it out and you give people scenarios and then they kind of realize aligning with their values, like, oh, actually, I don't want that, or, oh, actually, that doesn't make sense for my financial position. So I think that in itself is so powerful, especially if we are in that standpoint and we're in that position where we've, you know, got surplus or where we've got high income, but we don't know the next step or we don't know how to leverage and create more wealth for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to chat about, you were talking about obviously your client going through IVF, maternity leave. Women specifically, finances for women, we, to be honest, are in a bit of a disadvantaged position sometimes. I think with the gender pay gap being still prevalent, you can correct me if I'm wrong, gender pay gap, we've got things like maternity leave, our super is significantly lower if we go on maternity leave, and definitely worst case, and I have seen this and heard about this recently, if a woman gets divorced and she was the caretaker at home in terms of looking after the kids and the man is the one that earned the income, they get divorced like years down the track. Not only is her super lower, but in terms of a financial position entering back into the workforce, she's lost this work experience. And I don't have studies to show me, but from what I've heard is that entering into the workforce later on in life is significantly harder than when you enter it when you were younger, because you have that gap and that missing. So I do feel like finances for women are at a disadvantage. So what are you seeing from your perspective around this and how we can almost change this in a way?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much to unpack there. Like a whole podcast episode. Literally. On that. Women are absolutely, I will just start with that. Women are, the odds are against them. They're disadvantaged really before they even really start the workforce because of that, and it's just because of society and how everything's been structured for so long. And so many women I see are at that point where they are having to take career breaks. And almost to the point as well, it's so common for people to actually come back to that point where they're like, do I even go back to work? Because childcare is going to cost me more than I'm going to even earn. So what's the point? Why would I go and spend more and go backwards and not spend time with my child? Why would I do that? Or they are in lower paying jobs, so they're the ones that have to sacrifice their career because maybe their partner or whichever. I mean, there are some men out there or some same-sex couples which have the same sort of decisions that they have to face as well. So it's a huge, huge issue. On the divorce point, so interestingly enough, a number of years ago, and I know we were speaking about this a little while ago actually, I did my collaborative law course, so as a financial neutral. There's another path, there's another opportunity of people being able to get professional help in the midst of a divorce or a marriage breakdown or a separation. There's obviously you just agree collaboratively and then you sign the papers and be done with it. You can do a mediation, or you can, unfortunately, a lot of people go down the path of the full sort of court argument. That's when thousands and tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars are on lawyers. There's another option which is called collaborative law, which you still have your individual lawyers, but you agree to keep it as really amicable as possible. And you involve people like myself as a financial neutral, maybe it's an accountant. And instead of just going, it's 40-60, 50-50, 70-30, whatever the split is that a lawyer would typically fight for, or you spend tens of thousands for that extra 1%, you actually break down to what you need. So it might mean that, okay, well, one person can't go and get a mortgage because they earn $70,000, and with two young children, they're not going to get a mortgage for what they need in the inner city of wherever they are. So maybe that's where you look at it and go, well, that person, it makes sense for them to get the house, and then the other person gets all of the super, or you can have those discussions. So even with or without that process, you can reach out to see someone like myself, and we can really talk through, well, what do you actually need? Are you just fighting for 50% because that's what you think is the fairness or whatever? Yeah. So that's something that I think can really help people in that scenario, because that's a really tricky one, and people do tend to find themselves, or everyone really, in that nastiness of that option at the courts. That's no one wins. Yeah. Financially or emotionally with that. So I told you so much to unpack.
Yeah, keep going.
My list is in my head is so long. I'd say as well, so starting early is what's going to help. No matter who you are, what your gender is, anything like that, starting early is really going to set you up for no matter where your life takes you.
What do you define as starting early? What does that mean?
I would say as soon as you are in your first job. So if you're 16 and you're listening to this and you work at McDonald's part-time or over the school holidays, start early. Those habits and automating those habits, so there's not that decision fatigue, is really going to set you up for the long run.
Are we talking about investing? Is that what you mean by starting early?
It depends.
Okay. I love the nuances.
My two most used words, it depends.
Yeah.
What I mean by structure is just getting some sort of structure. So going back to what we were talking about at the start in terms of understanding where you are, what you earn, what you owe, all of that, what you spend, and then planning for what you're actually needing to plan for or save for or invest for. And that might be saving, it might be investing. It just depends on what it is that you're wanting to do. But some sort of habit starting early, whether that's saving $20 a week or putting an extra $20 into your superannuation, or whether it's setting up $20 into a micro investing app, if that's a good place to start. It just depends on what you're comfortable with at the time. And that's all general advice.
Of course.
There's no personal advice here.
Of course.
And I think just having those habits, especially if you've been brought up with a mindset of something that's not serving you well or it's not aligned with you, really thinking about what you can do. And I think small actions is so much more successful than trying to get everything perfect and everything. You don't have to have $20,000 saved before you start doing something like investing. It's those small actions that are really meaningful. Where I see people set up really good habits, especially, is if they are they've left school and their first full-time job or part-time job, whatever that looks like, is just getting those habits, because that income lifestyle creep, when people earn 50 to 60 to 70, all of a sudden they're on 100, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I've earned so much more. How did I survive on 50 grand and I've doubled my income now, but I don't have anything to show for it? How does that work? It's that lifestyle creep, because they haven't had that sort of intentional spending or intentional planning or saving or investing. So I think those habits starting young. Did that answer your question?
That is so good. No, that's so helpful because obviously we were talking about, it doesn't matter what gender, but obviously for women starting young and having habits to help set themselves up for maybe in the time that they go on maternity leave, and then potentially seeing someone like you when you can give them options and things. Yeah. When we talk about habits and say we're someone like me now, nearly 30, yay for me. I have financial habits, but what could then I implement as habits? Because lifestyle creep is a thing, 100%, and I'm sure you see that all the time. So what could people like in my shoes today start to do in terms of habits or setting yourself up?
Yeah. I would say with where you're at the moment, not knowing anything about your personal circumstances, really it's about understanding, well, what has worked with, what's worked with, sorry, let me just restart that one. I would say what has worked well for you in the past and what's not serving you well. So what are the things that you get really frustrated on or you feel like you are continuously doing and you're like, I just can't crack that. It's not really aligning with my values or my intentions or what I'm looking to achieve, and start from that and then figure out, I think, that goal perspective of what are you actually working towards.
Yeah.
One of the biggest parts as well, especially when it comes to any type of where the money goes part of the decision, is the time frame. So a lot of people think you can get rich overnight. There's magic bullets, and that's where people do get into a bit of strife, especially around what's next is thinking about the time frame. So if you came to me and said, okay, my next step is that I would love to purchase a house in 12 months, and I want to try and save as much money as I can as fast as possible. Investing in that short space of time is not appropriate because we don't have time to wait out. If you're planning to purchase in 12 months, any goal, it could be anything. If you're planning to invest for that short period of time, the market could absolutely plummet down. And that would then mean, well, are you okay not to do that then if you're not going to be able to have those funds available or have to sell your investments at a loss? And so understanding a time frame around those goals and having as much time to plan for those and adjust is definitely key.
That makes sense. And I think, would you recommend as well in terms of finances, because I think values are really important in everything and you're a big believer in values and working holistically. So getting clear on what your values are and future projecting. Like, for example, if I was, say, this is very hypothetical, if I was like, I want kids in X amount of years or I want a house in X amount of years, a second house, whatever, would we then, what's our values and then make a plan around that?
Correct. Yeah. And I think one thing as well is people, the people that I work with are getting your plans sorted, whether it's with or without an advisor, it's going to change. I guarantee you life changes, everything around you out of your control and in your control, everything changes. So having that path, knowing where you're going and your clarity and your structure's all set up, but also being open to the idea that it will change and your preferences will change. So that could look like, in a general sort of sense, it could be, I think the first thing I work on with people is getting structure, because without structure, if you can't see it, it's really unclear.
I love structure. Tell me the structure.
It is great. Well, the structure is personalised for everyone. And so what we do is, for example, like I'll give you an example that's really common. People come to me and they might have purchased their home. They've done really well of saving all this money and it's sitting in their offset account, which is great. It can be a really great way to reduce the interest you pay on your home loan. But they look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, I've got 50 grand there and I don't really know, like it's good, it's going to good use, but I don't really know how much of that can I spend on a holiday? Do I need, how much of that is my emergency fund? How much of that is a buffer for bills? How much of that goes towards time off work? How much of that goes to our renovation? Or do we borrow more to renovate the home? Or do we do that in a way to build equity to... be able to upsize the home, or are we investing, or are we so there's so many, as you can see, that's why I say it depends.
No, but that's so good. I would have that question.
Yeah. And there's all those different considerations, which is why people come to see me, because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
They're like, there are so many options out there and it's worked different ways for various people I know. And I don't know. I have no idea. And that's why I literally say it depends every second sentence of my life, is because it really does.
Yeah.
So, when you ask the question, someone like me, what do I do? really comes down to, I think, the timeframes, what those goals are, how much you need for them, and then speaking to the right team. So having your professional team around you, advisor, mortgage broker, accountant, whoever that might be, for that specific purpose to help you understand the different strategies available to you.
Yeah.
Going back to even without a professional, I think having structure is key. And whether that is investing, saving, whatever it might be, that separation, that transparency, I think that's also where we can tap into the chat around the mindset and not avoiding or confusing yourself with the lack of structure. I think if people just have a lump sum of money all in one account or just one particular investment and they don't really know what it's for, that's where it can become quite overwhelming and confusing. So I think that the transparency and the structure, getting that sorted with or without professional help is really a game changer for a lot of people.
So when you talk about structure, say right now, obviously, women might be wanting to go down the path of professional help. But if we are looking at structure, I am a very big believer and did this. And for me, it was a huge game changer because I was the girl that put my head in the sand like a camel. I don't know whether camels do that, but head in the sand.
Love seeing
I was like, that's so random. Put my head in the sand. And I just would not look at my finances. And I just had one giant account and everything would go in and out of that. And splitting up my money, which I know that huge books, Barefoot Investor, like big books have talked about splitting things up into buckets and knowing where your money goes. For me, that was such a big game changer in terms of the control that I had around money, seeing things clearly. When I paid a bill, I didn't feel this sense of like, oh my God, it's coming out of my savings. No, it's not, because I have it there for that purpose. Do you find that very helpful in terms of?
Helpful. Yeah. And I'm a very visual person myself as well. So if I had a lump sum of money just sitting there, I'd be like, cool. Well, okay. Well, I'm a spender naturally, right?
Yeah.
So I would see it and be like, okay, it's fine. Like I've got money there. I can book, that extra long holiday for another week. But it's going to really be detrimental, right? So I think having that structure and being proactive, like I said before. So a lot of people look at what they think they can save, whether that be, $100, $200 a week or whatever it might be, and go, okay, cool, let's plan around that. But realistically, you should plan before you know what's left over. So what I mean by that is the biggest thing is figure out your fixed bills first. That's the main one. You know what your phone bill is going to be. You know what rent is going to be, mortgage is going to be, those things. So write those down. They are the absolute, you know what they are. Side note to that, when you have time in your life admin pile, review those things as well, because you don't want to be paying loyalty tax to providers that, you could be potentially paying something better elsewhere.
So true.
So the fixed bills, and then I think like the variable bills, so petrol, groceries, like that's always going to change. But I think that's where you could look back at what you have been spending and go, okay, well, is that I'm happy with that, or do I need more, do I need less? So figure out the variable bills as well. And give yourself a little bit of leeway.
Yeah.
I think with the variable bills, what I always say to people as well is give it 6 to 12 weeks to figure out what's working, what's not working. If you have said you are allocating $100 a week to petrol and you figure out after that time frame you don't need that much, just drop it and then adjust it. Or if you're like, you know what, every single week I was so short on that, adjust it. That's fine. So continuously checking in with that sort of thing. So those two, definitely separate those, I'd say. And then look at as well any of those fun goals, like the travel, like the eating out, the dinners, the lifestyle expenses.
Yeah.
And that's where you can really start to make meaningful decisions of, do I actually want to be spending $10 a day on coffee, or do I get myself an espresso or some sort of machine at home and make a coffee before I go to work? And so that's where you can start to adjust those things like that and make meaningful differences, and then see what's left over. It's really interesting the amount of times I've spoken with clients and we put everything together and they're like, you're saying we can save 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 grand, whatever it might be, a year, but we don't see that. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's get that structure, let's get automation in place. And then you should start to see and adjust, like I said, adjust along the way. So I think the structure and the automation.
Automation as in like it automatically moves to the...
Just let it
so you don't do it.
Pay, it comes in, it goes to its different purposes and different accounts, and it takes that decision fatigue away. I think as well, having that separation, I know for myself, if I see, let's say my travel savings or a particular purpose, for example, if I look at that and go, do I want to take some money out of that particular purpose,
Yes.
rob Peter to pay Paul. Like, do I actually want to do that? It creates a road bump, and it's that resistance.
It does.
You actually have to actively make that decision to steal from future you,
Yes.
or make life hard for yourself by taking it from a bills account, for example. So I think it's just that visual sort of that visualness of the structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think that is so helpful because it's what I do, and it's the same. I get that resistance if I'm like, oh, do I really want to buy that sale that I saw on Instagram? Because I feel like also with social media, my spending habits have increased.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
On
a side
that
tangent.
note, I would say my biggest tip with that though is like just give yourself 24 hours between an impulse spend.
Yes.
The amount of times I've looked at something, like I've wanted a Dyson Airwrap for years and I haven't yet. My hairdresser keeps telling me, she's like, it's not going to work on your hair. Funnily enough, I've curled my hair with a $1.50 octopus heatless something from Kmart.
Love Kmart.
And I almost spent $1,000 on a Dyson Airwrap. It's so many Christmas black sales, every Black Friday sales.
Yeah, because it comes up all the time.
Yeah, and I always, with especially big purchases, just leave it in your cart, give yourself at least 24 hours and really think about it. The amount of skincare sales I've missed by doing that and being like, oh, I missed the sale, but I'm like, clearly didn't need it, did I?
Yeah, the same. Like if I've missed a sale, then I'm not going to buy it. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
If it's full price, I'm not going to buy it.
So I think delaying the impulse spends is a huge one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unsubscribe to the marketing emails. Just,
I know, I have
remove
had-
temptation.
I've definitely unsubscribed because they automatically put you in, which I think is ridiculous. But that's
Yeah.
a different conversation. When we talk about short-term goals, long-term goals, because currently we are in a financial crisis where cost of living crisis is awful. So when we talk about like we are people that want to, save for the future, get security for our future, but at the same time we still want to have all these experiences and we want to travel. How do we balance being able to have those experiences and what we want now with also saving for our financial future? Because that is something that I struggle with.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, psychologically, biologically, whatever you want to call it, we're human at the end of the day. We really, most of the time, thrive off that instant gratification. It is so hard to see the benefit when you're not feeling it automatically. So if you're spending money immediately now, you're like, okay, cool, I feel good, like I'm excited, like I really wanted that. Future you haven't felt what future you feels like yet, right? So it is really hard. It's not something that comes naturally to humans. It is something that you have to really think of it as in you have to really try and get in that mindset of future you. And I think when you see that momentum and when you start to see things happen throughout your life, whether it be, oh my gosh, the fridge broke down, thank God I have an emergency fund and I didn't have to, it wasn't detrimental, for example, or I had one time where I had 2 tires, nails in it, within a week, and I was like, that is so annoying.
But thank God you have an emergency fund.
Thank God. And so things like that, when you start to actually experience it and see it, and you understand what it feels like, because I think that's it. Like people feel the loss more than they do the wins, right? And it's not really until you feel that loss that you realize, okay, I really need to make sure that doesn't happen again. Or you see someone else go through that.
Yeah.
And so I think almost, especially one thing that I talk to people about is making sure you have your emergency fund saved.
Yeah.
So like I always say at least 3 to 4 months expenses saved. And if you're struggling to save for that, think of it like you're paying back a debt. You're paying back a debt to future you. So
that's a good
think
frame.
of, I need to save whatever it might be of your expenses. Go, that's a debt that I need to pay off. And that debt is for future me. And that's my first focus. Before you invest, before you have fun with all these lifestyle things that you perhaps don't need, that's one of the most important foundations is getting that emergency fund saved.
Yeah.
That's going to help the really crappy situations that can happen.
Yeah.
In terms of, the cost of living, that's also a pretty crappy thing that's happened.
Literally.
So bad. So I think having that transparency and that buffer, I think, with regards to, like I mentioned, the structure and whatnot. So if you're running so close to the line and this week, the next month, whatever it might be, petrols, groceries, everything's gone up, you need to be able to have that clarity to then not feel as overwhelmed when you go back to your list of expenses and see, okay, actually, you know what? I do have the ability to maybe spend $20 less on this a week to make that work. where people get really emotionally overwhelmed and really financially stressed is that they just don't even know. They feel really, excuse the term, but shit out of luck, because they're like, I can't do it. I don't have that. I don't have $20. But most of the time it's just because they don't know what their situation looks like.
Yeah.
They don't have that clarity and that transparency.
Yeah.
So I think having the clarity and peace of mind and that transparency is what saves a lot of people as well from the emotional psychological side of the financial stress as well.
Yeah, okay. If we talk about then joint goals and we talk about relationships, because I feel like relationships are probably, money is a big part of relationships, whether that's the shame around money, you each bring your individual money stories to relationships, divorce rates, the financial, I think divorce, it was like around 20 to 40%. There's not an actual statistic, but especially around divorces because of financial problems. So there is this, finances are such a big part of relationships. So what do you suggest, because you deal with not even individuals, but work with couples, how do we start to have a conversation around money, and what type of conversation should we be having with our partners? Yeah,
look, couples, it's interesting, and I have seen hundreds of couples over the years, and it's really interesting. As soon as, it could be not even half an hour into a conversation, I can read the situation quite well in terms of perhaps what they have had conversations about, what their experience has been as a couple. I really like to dig into, well, what did money look like for you growing up? And so understanding your money story is really important. Quite quickly, people do open up to say, well, I came from a family that all we did was save money and pay off the mortgage. Investing was gambling, so we didn't do any of that. Or maybe your family grew up with not much money, and so you have a real scarcity sort of mindset, and you're terrified of money and decisions, and so you avoid it. And so I think it's about understanding, well, what's made you who you are? Where have you sort of come from? What have you sort of carried forward with that you like, and what don't you like going forward?
Yeah.
I think the accountability of having someone as well as a couple. I know myself, my husband and I, when we started to have the money chats for the first time, it's definitely exposing for some people.
Totally.
Like, oh my gosh, are they going to be, don't be judgmental, I think is what
Or
I'm
if there's
trying to say.
debt, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're bringing in so much to a relationship.
Yeah. And so I think approaching it with compassion and just being completely non-judgmental and really open-minded, to be really understanding of, not everyone's been in a fortunate position to be financially secure entering in a relationship, or maybe you don't have the right not the right values. Maybe you don't have the same values around what you want to spend your money on. I think that openness and having those conversations is important. I think as well, understanding that there should be independence in a relationship.
Yeah.
Having your own splurge funds so you don't feel guilty about buying a Dyson Airwrap, for example, whatever it might be. Having the permission to have that independence, and permission's probably not the right word, but knowing each other and going, you know what, we're allowed to have our own independence. And then having that open, non-judgmental conversations.
Yeah, I really like that as well. I think a huge thing for us in my relationship is that we have a joint account where, bills, etc., but we definitely still have our own independent accounts, because that's where I would hate to be like justifying what I'm spending, because I'm that type of person, like, oh, I just want to buy like this thing, or like, it's not. I love that we can have our own things.
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah. And I definitely think as well where the friction definitely comes from sometimes with couples is when maybe one person's not as engaged as the other. Maybe they're being a little bit more careless with money, which is impacting joint goals. And I think that's a conversation in itself to start with. But again, it's probably just that awareness. Like I had a couple the other month, and I kind of, again, psychologist Cara hat on.
Yeah.
I was just kind of letting them talk it out and whatnot, and they were talking about his lunch expenditure at work. Every day he got a banh mi, and I think when I calculated it up, it was about $2,000 or $3,000 a year or something like that. And I said, do you know, if you only had a banh mi like once or twice a day, you could save X amount. And whatever the saving was, it was a return flight to Europe. And she's like, see, I told you. I was like, so he saw that and he goes, well, actually, when you put it like that, like I'm happy to sacrifice 2 banh mi a week to be able to go to Europe, or even if it's a family weekend away or whatever it might be. So I think it's knowing what the impact is to not just you, but also your family or your spouse, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Do you recommend having regular conversations around money, or, you know, some people talk about money dates and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it depends on what works for you as a couple.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes people like doing it weekly. Sometimes people do a monthly check-in. I think monthly is a great chance just to, sit back, talk about what's worked well, what hasn't worked. Again, like there's so much out of your control that changes as well. So it could be your work, it could be the price of groceries have gone up, or you've just got a rent increase or a mortgage interest rate increase or decrease. And so those trigger points as well is really important. I think sometimes, especially when people, let's just say interest rates, right? Your mortgage has gone down. People go, oh my gosh, cool, we've got an extra $50 a month or whatever it is. But then they don't do anything about it. They don't action that. So having chats when things happen, and then also just the general sort of check-in to see how you're going. I think one thing to note as well with couples is it's okay not to be over the moon to talk about finances. I have so many people that there are couples that one of the people that really wants to talk about it and the other person's just not interested whatsoever.
Yes.
This bores me. I don't want to talk about it. I'm happy for them to make the decision. And that's okay, but you should at least be somewhat invested and you should be at least somewhat bought into that, because it's a joint thing, right? So
joint
you need
goals.
to be aligned with that and at least somewhat engaged and know what's happening.
Yeah.
You don't need to love it, but you need to at least have that chat and respect, you know, what you're both working towards and working so hard for as well.
Yeah, of course. My partner and I, we do money dates, we said monthly, but we didn't. But we make it a fun thing. Like we'd open a glass of red, or like we cook dinner at home, and like it becomes a little bit more fun. We obviously do the finances before the red wine, but like it becomes more of the it just becomes more of a fun thing instead of like, let's sit down and have a money chat. Like it's more of an experience that we can look forward to versus like that sterile talk about money.
Yeah. Even asking yourselves questions like, if we could tomorrow just quit work and we could still earn the same money, what would we do? What would we spend our time doing? What would we do for our own hobbies? What would we do together? And really, I think that question really answers a lot for so many people to go, well, that actually really talks to what do we want to be spending more time doing instead of just going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home. And I think also creating a life that is meaningful also helps the relationship dynamics, because again, like so much stress comes around money. If you avoid that, if you aren't enjoying it, you're enjoying work, you're not talking about using that money to do things as individuals or couples, that's where a lot of that stress comes from as well.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice. I really love implementing that. Like, I'm a person that loves lots of questions. So just big picture thinking, and you can really pull out your values from that as well, I think as well. Yeah. Now, if you had to leave the audience, the women listening, with one piece of advice, just in terms of finances that could really make a big impact in their life, what would it be?
Oh, such a great question. Honestly, the biggest point I see where people go wrong as such is just avoiding it. And so I think the awareness rather than avoidance is huge. You do not need to change absolutely everything overnight. You do not need to perfect it. You do not need to have a lot of money or a lot of years on your age to be able to do something. Those small actions, I've always said something is better than nothing. So taking that first step and having that awareness around that is honestly one of the biggest things. And it sounds so simple, but honestly, it changes so much. And just taking that first step is one of the biggest things. And if you can't do that on your own, get an accountability buddy. Have a friend that can maybe help you with that, or a partner, or see a professional. So taking that first step, the awareness and the action is really so much more than the avoidance.
Yeah, I think that is such great advice, and you've given so much examples and strategies around taking that first step, and then after there where we could go. Now, before we leave, everybody that comes on opens her file, which is basically there's 3 questions in there, but it allows us to understand you a bit more because we've talked about finances and all the money and all the things, but I just want to get the women to know you.
Okay.
So in the file of 3 questions, I will pass you the file. I just want you to pick one question that stands out for you, whichever one kind of resonates the most.
Maybe when I was thinking about this the other day, I was like, I bet there's a what's your biggest money loss story? I already told you. Well, I didn't quite get to the Dyson Airwrap today.
It's true.
Jesus, good question.
Pick one and then just read it aloud. But whatever comes to your head, don't think about it too hard.
Okay. All right. I think I've chosen my question. Okay. Do you anticipate which questions people choose?
I sometimes, but I'm not sure sometimes.
Okay. So the question is, who were you pretending to be before you became her, the woman you are today?
Yeah.
Love that question. I have honestly been on I would say for the last 5 or 6 years, have been on a huge mission in general as a person, trying a bit of soul-searching mission, I think. And I think I was definitely in a mindset previously of just doing things that I thought people wanted me to do or be who I am. And I think the older I become, sometimes I do feel really old because I'm like, I'm just really like, I think I'm in a place I'm actually really content with who I am. And it's almost like I can't even describe it, but it's almost like I've found that sort of inner peace of actually loving who I am and not being like, I need someone else's approval or opinions. And I still get into that point, I think, sometimes when I'm worried about what people think or whatnot. But at the same time, I'm definitely at a place and different things happen where I'm like, oh my gosh, the Cara like 6 years ago would not have done that. Or just, I think, choosing my own happiness and going, well, you know what, if someone doesn't like that, that's a them problem. I think this is not even financial related, but I've worked with a body image psychologist, actually. He has been amazing. And one thing I shared with him was the Eras tour in her era. Get it? Yeah. Hilarious. Last year with Taylor Swift. Yeah. And I went in, I was shitting myself. I had made one of the Midnight's bodysuit. So no pants, like obviously stockings and whatnot. And I went into the MCG wearing a leotard, and I am not a small person. And I just remember looking at that being like, oh my gosh, you know what? Like, I had the best time. I was happy. I didn't care what people thought. Like, I did feel self-conscious, but I'm like, I'm so glad that I chose to do that. And that's just one example of like feeling happy in myself. And that has related to, like, that has really transpired to so many different parts of my life. And I think it's just letting go of the negative, or letting go of your own negative self-talk has been, huge. I don't even know if I answered
I love
that.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Not even money related.
No, it doesn't need it. I was more about you, and that's what I wanted. That was perfect. So, Cara, thank you for coming on the podcast. Tell everyone where they can find you, connect. I'm sure they want to learn everything.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you'd like to reach out, my website is thehazelway.com.au. And my Instagram handle is also The Hazel Way, Hazel being my late nana, who I named the business after. So find me, I'll be on the show notes, I'm sure.
Yes, you will be.
Reach out, have an intro chat. That's all it's going to cost you is 30 minutes of your time, or send me a message on Instagram and we'll connect. And I'd love to hear more about where you're at in your journey and point you in the right direction to a nice, fulfilling life.
I love this. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.